What stops so many people from something that they could and should achieve? What stops people? Why do we stop ourselves? What gets in our way? And today we're finishing up talking about the 10 P's. This is the very final P of the 10 P's. And we're going to see if me, your instructor, can remember all of these things. I don't hold myself accountable to always remembering everything, but let us see. But today we are talking about your perfect practice. It is what is in between you and everything that you want. Because as we'll talk about in a bit, it's not who you are. It's not doing something right once in a while. It's you doing the right things consistently. That's what puts the space shuttle in orbit. That's what puts things where they go. So we're going to be talking about how you can live your life, live your business, live your profession in the state of practice. We'll talk about what practice means in a moment, but I got to ask you if you remember this car. What is it famous for? This is a DeLorean DMC 12. The DMC 12 was named that because it was supposed to cost $12,000, which is the equivalent of $50,000 in today's money. If you see one of these in real life, consider yourself lucky. There are only 6,000 of these cars driving the U.S. streets. Now, why is that? They're so cool looking. I mean, who wouldn't have thought about like the stainless steel thing? It doesn't rust. How cool. The wings, the car comes up with these wing doors. How intelligent. Well, let's talk about that. The reason that's not on the roads anymore has everything to do with the reason you might not be winning at your fullest capacity. The founder, the inventor of this DeLorean was John Z. DeLorean. And he grew up in Detroit. John Z. DeLorean worked his way through Chrysler, through a couple of other car companies, and eventually became the youngest person to run all of North America for General Motors. He was known to be a rebel. He hated the meetings. He had out-of-the-box thinking. Now, his out-of-the-box thinking is what actually shaped the GTO, right? There's songs written about the muscle car, the GTO. And we're not really quite sure what happened. He may have quit. He may have walked out with a box of his belongings from General Motors, but he left. And when he left, he vowed to spit in the face of the automotive industry, to create something that did not exist. It was going to be responsible environmentally and to the people. It was going to use the right kind of mechanisms, and we're not going to use these materials that are pollutants. And what he did was ignored conventional wisdom. He ignored all of the things that had happened before that had created successful car factories in the past, and he decided he would do things his own way. He promised that his car would go 0 to 60 in just a couple of seconds. I don't really know the actual. It was supposed to be fast. It's supposed to be fast. It's supposed to burn clean fuel. It was supposed to get more miles per gallon than anything out there on the road. And it was supposed to look cool. Of course, that was his main MO. And I would ask you and ask me that as we go through things, like we have to commit to not just looking cool and being different. That gets attention, and that's great. That's marketing. We need that in our world. But it's not who you are. It's who you are consistently that matters. It's what you can do at a high level consistently that matters. Quality matters. And that's what the DMC 12 did not have. The first drive that anyone would have in the DMC 12, well, parts would rattle, the windows would get stuck, the doors would get jammed, and it wouldn't ever hit its top speed. Johnny Carson, who had invested in the DMC in DeLorean, he ended up getting one of the first cars off the lot. And when he drove it off the lot, just a few miles off the lot, it broke down. And the car that picked him up from the DeLorean car lot also broke down. And that was the problem, my friend, of a company not in practice. All show and no go, as some might say. We'll talk about how you can avoid that. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about, what do I mean when I'm talking about practice? Am I talking about like a medical practice or a law practice? Am I talking about practice makes perfect? Well, let's take a look at it. But before we do, the 10 P's. Let's see if I can get these all down. First P, personality. Personality is a starting place. It's how you love yourself and honor yourself. So personality. Pursuit, having a vision to go after, knowing who you are, knowing what you want. These are the 2 keys. Like if you have these, you have the compass that's pretty much going to lead you to a lot of the other adventure. Who are you? What do you want? After your pursuit, you need to know, what's your power? What are your strengths? What are your gifts? What are the things that you should be playing from, where we're maximizing strengths instead of trying to grow in our weaknesses? Okay. So now we have these. So from power, we're going to, we need to get permission. We need to get permission to be different. Now, DeLorean was different, but different isn't always like the best. We know that different isn't always better. Now, better is always different, but different isn't always better. But getting permission to be different is huge. Okay. Permission. Now we need to know, let's see, that's 4, your people, your problem, and your process. Who are your people, problem, and process? How can you engage your way for your people, doing it like doing the puzzle you were meant to solve? There's the next one, which is planning. How do you plan from all of this stuff? You got to create a plan. If you don't plan, you plan to lose. You plan to fail. You're not doing anything other than random things, and that will keep you from the space we're at right now, which is the practice. And the practice simply is, I'm going to say it's you being you. It's you being a human being, not just a human doing, but you're a human being that is doing. That is what practice is about. But you know me, we're going to get into the etymology and into what some of these words mean. What a cool car, though. And also, it broke the promise of not going back in time. Tisk tisk. Practice comes from the word that means to follow or employ. A course of action, to do, to put into action, to practice. It means to perform, and that's what we're going to go with. So to perform or to practice. So that's the verb part of it. It comes from practical, which we'll look at in a moment. To perform or to do. Okay. Now the noun of it is to carry on a profession. To do or perform repeatedly or habitually the object of acquiring skill. To learn by repeated performance. And so you can see that there's 2 parts. The verb, and this is what we're talking about, that's the doing. You are in practice. That's the doing. And the noun is the thing done. So it's you doing and it's the thing done. It's both of these things. Well, can an artist be defined by his or her artwork? Well, no, but they can be seen in it. They can be seen in what they're doing. So the thing done does reveal something about you. It does reveal who you are, what you believe, and what you're good at. And at the end of your days, someone's going to say, hey, Grandma, Grandpa, they believed this, they did this, and they were great at that. That's your profession. And those of us that look deeply enough into our purpose, our own DNA, we see it. We can get really good at the things that matter. And we can drop all of the other stuff that doesn't. And so we'll be talking about that today. One thing that I do like to look at too here is that this comes from, well, the things we'll talk about is doing the same thing over and over again. Well, I'm sorry, we'll get to that in a second. Hold on. The practical comes from the practical. That's the word practical comes from practical. What is practical? Well, practical is a thing that you can be probably not, you won't be practical if you're like relying on life coaches and therapists who are always trying to fix things. Oh, you're not practical. You're going back and finding your inner child or whatever. I'm sorry. I'm not crapping on them, but I am saying that what you do matters. And so practical means dealing with practical matters applied, not merely theoretical. Everything else that we've looked at all the way up until this point, really up until we got to the planning, All of it was inside. This is where we take it and we bring it to the outside. We take what's inside, we bring it to the outside. And that is where we turn fiction into nonfiction. We turn fiction into fact. This is where we make our dreams the truth. This is practice. Now, what stops us from practice? I shared with you the quote, out of order, by the way. Bad teacher, bad teacher. We've all heard this phrase. This is the definition of what? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We say, that's the definition of insanity. But what if we did the same thing over and over again and we expected the same result? That is called practice. That's when you're doing something and you know that it's going to turn out the way that you anticipated it turning out. When people want to work with you and hire you as a professional, we want to know that a professional has practiced. They say that in anything that you do, in any type of sport or anything like that, that your practice should be like 10 times as much as what you play. That when you see someone performing a 2-minute song, they probably practiced it for 2,000 hours. Practice. When I look at practice and when we look at this as students of our own design, there's 2 areas where I want you to look at. And those 2 areas that we're talking about today is your repeatable day and your oxygen. When you know your repeatable day and when you understand what it is that you must have to breathe, you will win. Anything that I ever share with you, if it's too complicated, it's not thought through enough. This, I hope, should provide some elegant ways for you to create and sustain the same action that produces the result that you absolutely want. So let's look at what we're talking about here. We're going to be talking about the virtuous cycle. When what you do now informs what you will do in the future. I definitely want to come back to that in a minute, but Aristotle said, you are not what you do, you are what you repeatedly do. So there was a connection of being to doing. In the Christian faith, it says that you can't just have faith without works. You have to show your faith by your works. Your works show what you believe. And isn't that what we are as professionals? We work. We have a work to do. In a moment, we're going to do this. But I have to go into the Gandhi. He says that my life is my teaching. And I would say your practice is what you're teaching the world about what you believe to be true. And that's the essence of being a professional. So right now, we're actually going to talk about and get you into your repeatable day. We'll talk about some of the rewards in a minute, but I want you to think about what we're going to call the repeatable day, sustainable work. The repeatable day, and I have clients do this all the time, where I have them list out, like, what could you do every single day? Look, if I were to put it in another term, if you were to eat the same meal, my wife and my kids have had this conversation. If you were to eat the same meal and you had to eat the same meal every single day, is there one meal you could do every day? And I'm like, for some people, they say pizza. And for me, it's like, I guess I want to be general and cheat. And it's like, fruit. I could eat fruit every day. Okay, you can't. Okay, salad. I could do a salad every day. Could you do it for every meal? I don't know. That's kind of interesting to think about because we all are predisposed towards certain things. We have affections. And it's interesting how mostly we don't really trust our affections, the things that we want, even though deep down we know that we obey them, our desires. So I'm going to ask you this. Think about your calendar, think about the work, and if you're not doing the work that you love doing, I want you to think about the work that you would love doing. But this is probably most practically, came back to the practical word there, done from the space of where you're at now. From where you are now, What is the repeatable day? Like if you did this, you wouldn't come home depleted. You also wouldn't come home thinking you had cheated the world. You would come home feeling like at the end of the day, I did good work. I did good work and was able to have influence, impact, and income from my work. What does that look like? Are you talking to people? Are you writing? Are you selling? Like what could you do every single day that creates the results that you want? So I'm asking and pausing right now because I want you to give pause. I want you to give consideration. Go and write out a few things. What could I do every day that would produce results, that would impact, that would influence, that would create income? What can I repeat on the regular? As you're writing those things out, maybe think about the things that get in your way. What are the things I'm annoyed with? What are the things I feel like I spend too much of my time with? What are the things I feel like are distracting me? What are the things that make me feel like I don't have enough time? What are the things that make you wish to do something else? I'm not telling you that you have a world where you don't do those things. But I am telling you that those can be instructive of your repeatable day. Maybe you do less of them. Maybe you do them on a certain day, at a certain time. What's your repeatable day? Let's not stop at work, by the way. What are the things that you would like to do before work on a regular basis? Work out, go for a walk, pray, meditate, do your ice bath, whatever your thing is. Don't do it just because someone else does it. You can try it. But what are the things that would make your days like, I'm happy about that day? What about at the end? Of course, the story of the Mexican fisherman should work its way into this, and I wasn't planning on this, but the story of the Mexican fisherman goes like this. I'm actually just reading this. I just literally Googled it, and it really, really matters here because he was living his repeatable day. So, an American investment banker was at the pier of a small coastal Mexican village when a small boat with just one fisherman docked. Inside the small boat were several large yellowfin tuna. The American complimented the Mexican on the quality of his fish and asked how long it took him to catch them. The Mexican replied, "Only a little while." The American then asked why he didn't stay out longer. Why didn't he catch more fish? The Mexican said he had enough to support his family's immediate needs. The American then asked, "But what do you do with the rest of your time?" The Mexican fisherman said, "I sleep late. I fish a little, play with my children, take siestas with my wife, Maria, stroll into the village each evening where I sip wine and play guitar with my amigos. Live a full and busy life." The American scoffed. "I am a Harvard MBA. I could really help you out. You should spend more time fishing. And with the proceeds, buy a bigger boat. And with the proceeds of that, buy a bigger boat. And then you could buy several boats, and eventually you could have a whole fleet of fishing boats. And instead of selling your catch to a middleman, you'd sell them directly to the processor, eventually opening your own cannery. You would control the product, processing and distribution. You would need to leave this small coastal village and move to Mexico City, then LA, and then eventually New York City, where you can run your expanding enterprise." The Mexican fisherman asked, "How long will that take?" "About 15 to 20 years, the American replied. "And what then?" "That's the best part. When the time is right, you could announce an IPO, sell your company stock to the public, and become very, very wealthy. You could make millions." "Millions? Then what?" The American said, "Well, then you could retire, move to a small coastal village where you could sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take siestas with your wife, and stroll to the village in the evenings where you could sip wine and play guitar with your amigos. That man was living the repeatable day. What's your repeatable day? Good to think about. Are you living it now? Maybe you are. Maybe you are. I will drop the link for that. You can just type in Mexican fisherman if you ever want that actual story. That story means a lot to me. Actually, we'll move on though. So write down your repeatable day. You don't win by doing the right thing. You win when you keep doing the right thing. And right thing, we are so results driven in our culture that we sometimes forget the result that we really want, which is happiness, which is belonging, which is feeling worthy. Oftentimes I'll do a vision board exercise with people or, help them to create vision. And one of the things that they know, I want this house or I want this money. And it's like, okay, why? Well, because then I want to do this. Okay, why? And if you ask enough whys, they're going to tell you they want to feel something. And it's really sad that most of us deny ourselves a feeling that we could feel right now. So when I say success, I'm not just saying success in business, even though success in business is a part of it. Okay. Now I want you to think about your oxygen. There are certain things that you are going to do no matter what. And I find that whenever people quote unquote mess up in their calendar, when they leave their plan, it's because they planned a plan that doesn't give them sustenance, that robs them of the very thing that is in their essence, like this thing that is needed. It is their oxygen. I think I was telling you another time about a high-level real estate agent who was, she realized that we were trying to eliminate chaos from her schedule, and she actually thrived in chaos. And so how can we create structure from chaos was the question. We can't, if we removed it, she got bored. And so for you, maybe you have been depriving yourself of oxygen. Knowing what that is going to be key and important to you. My oxygen is sharing about purpose. My oxygen is finding people with problems and helping. My oxygen is deep thought. It's people. So if I don't have that in my practice, I die. My wife went to a chiropractor a couple months back, and she realized this woman isn't really in love with what she's doing. And it probably was robbing her or stopping her from doing something else that she would love doing. And a lot of times we do that to ourselves. We put aside the thing that we need, the thing that we want, and that's actually the thing that would cause us to thrive. What's your oxygen? Oxygen is where it tastes like candy and not like medicine. It's the thing you want to do, not the thing you have to do. It's the thing you always find a way to do it no matter what. And maybe, well, depending on your personality type, I threw a few of them in there. I threw a few of them out here. Maybe your oxygen is problems. Maybe you love them. Maybe your oxygen is competition and making a game of things. Maybe it's friends. Maybe it's fun. Maybe it's planning. Maybe it's research. Maybe it's technology. Maybe it's making videos. Maybe it's these things that you find yourself always circling back to, and then you feel bad about it. And guess what? That might be the greatest revealer of your design that there is. I'm going to talk to the Christians for a second. And Christians would say, well, the heart is deceitful and above all things, but also it says if you trust in the Lord, he will give you the desires of your heart. He would actually help you to desire the right things. And so why is it that we distrust ourselves? Well, my parents, well, my boss, well, Well, my church, well, we've been taught to distrust ourselves. And my hope is to undo some of that and allow some exploration here. Write it down. What is it that when you don't have this, you feel deprived? That's your oxygen. Write it down. And now I'm going to ask you to say, how can I put that into my practice? How can I put that into the regular, practical way that I do things, where it's not theory, it's visible, it's what's inside showing up on the outside. How can I put that into my plan? You have to have people? You have to have people? Okay, cool. Why don't you start your day talking to a friend? Well, I can't do that. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. We surrender so much of our authority to something we think we should do. How often do we question that? I hope that you don't give yourself, you don't have to ask permission to breathe oxygen. You just do it. And that's what I want you to see here. As a professional, as someone who's connected to a people on purpose to solve a problem that wants to bring the best into the earth, take permission, okay? Take permission to find your oxygen. All right. I want to share with you this. Oh, go here. This is one of my favorite stories of someone who knew their oxygen. If you've never met this character, is Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. I did a YouTube short with him before and got a lot of views. It was fun. I like it. And the reason I like this is because this is someone who was in practice. This is someone who said, I know who I am. I know what I'm here for. I know what I do. And I'm going to freaking do this better than anyone that's out there. And that was Walt Disney. If you see the character, we'll go through a little bit of the history in a second. This is Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. This is his first creation. He had done 24 featured cartoons of him, and they were different. This character, it went on that Walt Disney went back to Universal Studios, who owns Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, and he said, "Hey, we need to let's go rule the world with maybe I don't know. Maybe he said one day we could even have Oswald World. I don't know. I don't know what happened, but he thought he was going to rule the world, and they said no, and they said no. They said no. We're not giving you more money, and no, you don't own him. And guess what? They recruited all of his people away. They recruited his whole entire team. Everything he had. But you can't take everything from the person who is in practice. You can never take the skill of a person in practice. Oh, I can take Oswald. Great. Have Oswald. He even helped the next animator with Oswald. But here's what was happening when Walt Disney was doing Oswald. He was studying. He was connected. His oxygen was like, how can I make this thing different? He explored what's called personality animation. He's like, I don't just want Oswald to be a moving character. I want him to be very unique. I want him to be peculiarly Oswald. And so he really studied, how can I take human elements and put it into here? And he would study Laurel and Hardy and Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin and literally take these human movements and he would give personalities to cartoons. Now you and I might think, well, that seems normal, I guess. Back then it was not. Everything was very one-dimensional, and it was just, it wasn't the same. He was studying comedy. He was studying personality. He was studying how he could pull from live action and put it into cartoons. And even though they took Oswald the Lucky Rabbit from him, did they really? No, because what you get, so it's like the two sides of the equation of the person in practice is you get something while you give something. Walt Disney gave something, but he also gained something. And when you're in practice, meaning you're always getting better, always improving, always getting better, you're studying, you're curious, and your oxygen in your repeatable day are always going to lead you to curiosity. They're always going to lead you to something that pushes the label, pushes the edge. And no one can take that from you. Interestingly enough, the guy that yanked him from Walt Disney, his name was Charles Mintz. Charles Mintz is supposedly he's the bad guy in Up. They made him look just like Charles Mintz. I guess that's like Revenge of Disney, and they did eventually get the rights of Oswald back many, many years later, not too long ago. But that's what happens, guys, when you commit to being in practice. There's one thing I do want to say that that is important in this, and it's that you're creating a virtuous cycle. And the virtuous cycle is when you do something good, it gets, well, let's start here. If you do something a lot, you get good. If you get good, you get good results. If you get good results, it feels good. If it feels good, you do it more. If you do it more, you get better. If you get better, you get better results. If you get better results, see what happens? And this is instead of spiraling out of control, this is spiraling into control, or spiraling into your professional purpose. The virtuous cycle is something we should look to create. Flow is what we should look to create. It's the moments where no one on earth could do what you're doing the way you're doing it. And that happens when you become a person who practices. Now, you have to plan it. This is stuff you plan to do. And then the practice. The practice is you not just respecting your own personal process, the way that you know you can get it done. It's also you honoring yourself in the process. We don't serve others at the expense of ourselves. Okay. This has to go into the world of practical. A couple of little steps I will put in here, and then we'll get to the Q&A. Okay, really, if you're looking at it, this does follow really the 10 Ps in a lot of ways. You're going to have vision. And from vision, you develop your strategy, and then you create your habits. And the goal is that those are connected, right? We want to schedule that. So we do it. I didn't put that in here. We do it, and then we evaluate, and then we decide again. And that's how we keep ourselves into the place, into the space. And I'm asking you to actually have a time of evaluation. Now, I will say this, and I hope that you'll bring some of this into the time of today and into our coaching time. We don't have coaching this week, but it resumes next week. I do hope that you'll bring this into play. This is Robert Falcon Scott. Robert Falcon Scott decided he would be the first person to reach the South Pole. Now, this is the early 1900s, where expeditions and exploration were a big thing, and being the first at something really, really mattered. And what he did was planned from the best that he knew. He decided, rather than listening to the wisdom of what was around him, they said, go through this pass. And he said, no, I think I'm going to go through this one. They said, well, you need to go a little bit earlier. He's like, no, I think we're fine with the weather. They said, you should really use a dog sled team. They're built for this. And he said, no, I think what we're going to do is we're going to use ponies to transport our stuff. And then when we get to the impasse, we'll shoot the ponies. And that's what he did. And when he got to the South Pole, this is him and his men in front of the flag of another country who actually reached it first, 5 weeks before he did. They were defeated and they were dejected. But the actual challenge of their journey wasn't the challenge to get there. It was the challenge on the way back. Weather got bad, as it does in Antarctica, and they ended up dying. They froze to death 11 miles away from a repost, place where they could actually find a way to refuel, rest, and survive. They tried their hardest. Effort did not save them. Effort alone did not create the path. Effort is needed. Part of your practice is taking into account the opportunity, the options that are in front of you, the wisdom of others who are speaking to you, and from that, creating a way. Would that have made a difference? For him, maybe it would have. Could it make a difference for you? I believe so. We all need the voice of another in our life. And if we're out of practice, it's like being a guitar out of tune. You might not notice it, but other people will. And you should have someone that you're asking, am I practicing what I preach? Am I living my message? And get someone who'll be real with you. Business owners, don't find the kiss butt sycophant that's going to just suck up and tell you what you want to hear. Get someone that's going to give something real. Okay? We all need them. So for you to maintain your space in this, always remember these two things. Number one, am I living my repeatable day? The end of your day will tell you. Are you smiling at the end of your day? Right? Am I living my repeatable day? And the number two thing is, am I paying attention? Am I giving myself my oxygen? Or am I depriving myself? If you will do that and keep in consideration all of the other 10 Ps, you are going to be that professional on purpose. Now, I'm going to show you something real quick.